Hi, everyone. We are so excited about today's episode. It's going to be a little bit magical and mysterious, considering this is the Halloween week. We are going to be exploring gifts of spirit and how this is connected to the witch wound.
Welcome to Modern Sages Podcast.
I'm Jenn Gilbreth.
And I'm Candace Coons.
With over 25 years combined, we have delivered messages from beyond,
explored ancient healing wisdom, and integrated these profound teachings into our everyday life.
We are passionate about creating new ways of being human in the modern age by integrating the wisdom of the past with the present and coming into remembrance of who we truly are.
Are you ready to change your relationship to life itself? If the answer is yes, your journey begins now.
As always, before we get started, we are going to be talking about the tea that we're drinking today, which is a hibiscus tea.
Mm-hmm. It's so beautiful. It looks like wine, like red wine in the mug, and I'm drinking out of my favorite unicorn mug. I'm so excited. This makes me feel extra magical. So I'm drinking that this week and out of that this week. And I tell you, hibiscus has so many wonderful qualities. Again, this is such a medicinal herb, and we love exploring herbs and incorporating herbs into our daily diet through our medicinal teas and also the supplements that we take, herbal supplements. But this one helps clean the blood of fat cells. It lowers cholesterol. It's wonderful for blood sugar regulation. It's full of antioxidants. It's supposed to have anti-cancer agents, which is amazing. And it assists people with weight loss, which is great too. So I think it also helps with aging. I think it has anti-aging properties.
It does. Yeah.
Is there anything I'm missing that you can think of that?
No, that sounds all so good. And it's like, why wouldn't you take that magical, that magical tea? Because that sounds like there's so many benefits.
Yeah. And I've been really into the sweetener lately. I think I mentioned this to you the last time. Do you remember when I was mentioning that monk fruit sweetener?
Yes.
This is fantastic. And this was used by the Buddhist monks for centuries. They call it the fruit of enlightenment. And now they sell it. It has 0 calories. So if you're watching your sugar intake, it's a wonderful sugar substitute. But I like it so much better than stevia and some of the other sugar-free things because it has kind of an aftertaste. And sometimes that gets a little bit old sometimes from the sugar-free syrups and stevia.
Yeah, I need to try that. I know you mentioned that last time. So I'm like, I really need to try that.
Yeah, it has no aftertaste. It's fantastic. So anyway, highly recommend it.
Highly recommend hibiscus tea. It's tastes amazing. It looks beautiful. And there's so many amazing benefits. And I feel like it's also kind of the perfect witchy drink, especially for the holiday season, because it's like you said, it's that deep red, deep wine red. So it's like, kind of got that little mystical feel too.
Exactly. Yes. I'm excited about today, Jen. Like, you and I both had such a strong prompting to talk about this.
Yes.
From spirit.
Yes, we did.
Strong.
Well, and even when to get started, is like we heard about the witch wound when we were working with Dana on our podcast, all about healthy emotions. And as she mentioned the witch wound, you and I both just like our whole body, like we just got chills and it just called to us so much. And I feel like there's so much to encompass in all of this. And especially when it comes to gifts of the spirit, because during the Aquarian age, like so many people are being arising and being called to explore their spiritual gifts. But I also feel collectively that this witch wound, like the blueprint of it is still in our system. It's still there. So it's like, it can kind of be a heavy balance when it comes to spiritual gifts as well as battling the witch wound.
Totally.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember, what was the name of that author?
It's called Witch.
It's called just Witch.
Yeah. Witch by Lisa Lister. And it's so amazing. And seriously, like listening to it, even just the first few words, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so what everyone is needing. And so like what I've been experiencing. I love the fact that she talks about what a witch is. because, we think about this and we think about it as in the old, like we think about the movies, the olden days where they're burning people or doing wicked spells on people, and that's not necessarily always accurate when it comes to the witch wound. So do you want to talk about that a little bit to kind of give a little
Oh man. Yes, it's
backstory?
way misunderstood. Way misunderstood. It's so sad to think about historically how men and women, it wasn't just women, were burnt at the stake or hung for helping others heal themselves with herbs or help with midwifery.
Yeah, that was a big one.
Yes, or to do sacred ceremony to help release emotional trauma and wounds.
Yeah.
It was so misunderstood. It was so rooted in healing and love. And the fact that organized religion got in the way of people's healing paths. And it really was about power. It was about the imbalance of power, the misuse of power
Right.
on our planet. And this is, historically speaking, humans have been doing this since the beginning of time, using every excuse known to man and unknown to man to be harmful and hurtful and to express violence, either verbally or physically, to others. This has been happening. This is something that is in the human nature that we are transmuting and rising above, but it's something that we need to be aware of, especially historically speaking, so we don't repeat the same mistakes over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And we're at a time with the Aquarian age where anywhere where there has been injustice or abuse of power, and those have suffered in those particular areas, whether it be race or gender or spirituality or beliefs or whatever, all of that is just coming to the surface and being called for healing and love right now.
Absolutely.
And so I feel like this is really coming to the forefront, because another thing that happens as you go through this awakening process is that you start to come back into remembrance of who you are as a multi-dimensional being. Yeah. And your gifts of spirit start to strengthen. And so when your gifts of spirit start to strengthen, when your clairsentience or your clairvoyance or clairaudience or claircognizance or whatever it is strengthening, every single person that I have come into contact has to face this witch wound that Lisa Lister is talking about, that she coined this term, which is so brilliant. But every one of those people have had to face this wound because they're like, I don't want to be judged. I don't want to be ostracized. I don't want to be casted out of my family or perceived as weird or different. And all of the things that this wound brings up for us gets confronted.
Yeah, so, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's so interesting too, because you and I both have experienced this time and time again.
Oh, yes.
As you know, we've heard on both of our stories from the 2 previous podcasts, but also it's just like, it's so interesting to see how twisted that things can become, because ultimately, as we've discovered many, many, many times, is that our innate essence of who we are is connected to spirit, is that divine infinite source. And connecting into spirit, connecting into our gifts, being able to help heal energetically, like that's part of what is naturally who we are. Yes. And all of a sudden, when we're starting to be awakened into our heart center, really coming back into the Aquarian age, it's like all of a sudden the things that we naturally are drawn to are opening up, but society kind of claims it as bad and wrong, or we view it that way. I feel like it's definitely opening up to a new space where a lot of people are being opened in these areas, which is so exciting. And one thing that I think is important to understand too is I feel like when I deliver messages, the way that this has come forward a lot is if you were to like close your eyes and have one of your loved ones walk into the room, you could feel their energy. You could, I don't know, I'm not a mom, but I feel like it could be easily understood that maybe when one kid walks in, you can feel who it is before you actually know who it is, right? Before you see them. And so let's say you're going to a party and you walk into a room, and before you walk into the room, let's say the hostess and another person got in a huge fight and they were yelling at each other, right? You could walk into the room and you could palpably feel that energy that was just released into the room. And a lot of people who are being awakened into their heart center are very aware of that energy and of that space. And so collectively, that's like a blueprint. It's like an energetic blueprint, and it's in Mother Earth's. I like to call it like Mother Earth's aura, because we all have an aura. Mother Earth has an aura, and things can get stuck in the aura. And I think the witch wound is one that's getting stuck in the aura, that's trying to be released. And so knowing that, like, because there are hundreds, if not thousands of people in the past who have experienced being rejected for that natural innate ability. And that's energetically being stuck in the blueprint. It's there from many different people. So it's like walking into that room with fighting times like 100,000, if not more, obviously. Right. And so it's very intense. And that could be, you know, whether or not someone believes in past lives, that could have been maybe what they've experienced in a past life, or even ancestrals, like our ancestors. It could be passed down in the genetics that are there. And so one way or another, it affects a lot of us. And I think it's so important that we talk about it and not make it wrong.
Everyone, not just a lot of us.
That's true.
Because that is something that I've been even discovering as we just even reflecting on this more. I thought it's not just myself or the students that I've been going through. Like, you know, even my husband, you know, like as I was coming out and talking about my gifts and helping others, he had to go process his own witch wound. I'm worried about if I was going to be ostracized or if someone was going to judge me and wanting to protect me. And because those are wounds that he also feels, and that collective energy of the witch wound. This is, like you said, I think it's lodged in the collective consciousness of everyone because of these memories that are held within the Akashic, that are held within our DNA, through our families, and also through the Akashic records. So at some point, everyone, I think, is going to have to confront this, because it's part of the awakening, is this reconnection and remembrance of who you are, which means that you have access to the wisdom of the whole universe inside of you. You don't have to go outside of yourself to connect with the divine that is inside of you. But when there's been abuse of power, the way power can manipulate or control is to sever you from your own personal power, which is that connection to the divine, and make you question or not trust yourself and say you need to go outside of yourself in order to connect with the divine. You can't trust yourself. How do you know you're not being tempted by this dark force or this energy?
That is huge.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like every single person is going to have to come up to this, because it needs healing. Because you are the manifestation. I am the manifestation of the divine in form. We are children of our creator of all things. There is no greater source of wisdom or power that is outside of us that we don't carry within us. Absolutely. So if that were the case, then those who want to control or manipulate you, they're like, well, where is the control? Because if you can create the life you want, if you can connect with spirit and the divine and heal and all of that, then how do I control? And I think it goes, a misuse of power has gone back, you know, for thousands of years, but the last 3,000 years has been the abuse of the patriarchal system. And I don't want to bash patriarchy. I'm not here to bash males. This is something we all have struggled with and have experienced pain from. because we carry the masculine and the feminine within us. But there is an abuse of energy here, just like there's a divine masculine and a divine feminine that we all carry within us. There's also the abuse of the masculine and the abuse of the feminine.
Yeah. I feel like we're kind of lately, I feel like there's also a pendulum, like we've talked about before, is like, it's like very much so one way right now, but knowing that, honoring that there is amazing masculine and feminine, I think is also what we're being called to see, is like, yes, we're speaking up more, the women are, but also it's like we need to find a healthy balance. Not we need to, but a healthy balance is being called into the energy space, because we can't just be one way or another. It's like we're here to adapt and to learn and to grow. And so I think that's very powerful too.
Well, it's like you said, it's human nature.
Yeah.
To like pendulum and get really mad and overcompensate. And, with the rise of the divine feminine in all of us, we're going to rise against the patriarchy. We're going to do this and do that. It's like, we have to be so careful because, there's endless ways to get caught in the dream of Maya, in the sense of over-identification and labels and all of these things.
Yeah.
What's happening is that we are being called to love this, to transmute this, and to bring this into balance. It's not about one side over the other side, or it is about learning and expansion and transmutation. Yes. So what did we learn? Like for me, it's like I look at organized religion and I say, you know what, there is a place for this.
Absolutely.
Like we need this in our families. We need this in our communities and our tribes. I think sometimes people feel not as satisfied with their religion just because it's so patriarchal. It doesn't really talk about the divine mother, if it believes in divine parents at all. But it doesn't talk about that divine feminine presence, because, the divine masculine is about, it's very protective. It's about order. It's about justice. So if you think about the patriarchal systems, all the language is revolved around these subjects of service. Also is divine masculine, big time, but divine masculine, protection, service, and order, and justice. You think about the divine feminine, it's about intuition, creativity, nurturing energy, sensual energy. And when that's just as part of that divine nature that's inside of us, just like that masculine. Now imagine with the balance of both inside of you, what you could accomplish.
Well, it's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting because I always talk about before sessions is we have the right side of our brain and the left side. And we know there's a right and a left side. The right side is a lot more of the free flowing. It's the spiritual, it's the creative. Where the left side's a lot more of the dominant. It's the analytical. It's the questioner. It gets things done. And so I always like to describe that when I connect into spirit, it's almost like I have to turn down the volume of the left side, which is the analytical, the questioning, because it can get so easy to like question everything coming through that it's like I have to turn it down and then turn it up to receive information from the right side of just allowing it to flow in. But of course, in life, we want to have a healthy balance between both. And I also see that's also where grounding comes in, and where like being very rooted is so important, is because if you live too much in one side, your body can get so over fatigued or so exhausted that it's like we need to find a healthy balance between both, right? It's like work hard, play hard. Because of course in life, we still have to get stuff done. It's not like we can just like sit on a couch and meditate and not do anything and just expect everything, which there's a form of that with like manifesting as you put out, but you also need to be willing to put in action, right? So it's finding the balance between both. And so I don't know, I just find that very fascinating, even what you're saying.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, you think about even the power card and the tarot, it's about balancing the passive and the aggressive side of us, or the yin and the yang.
It's like the temperance
the doing
card.
and the being. And the temperance too. And
back and forth.
yeah, but like the power card, she's, at least in mine, it's Frasier, and she's holding these cats with the reins on this wagon, and she's got the control. It's about power, the balance of power within you.
Yes.
And she has control of the reins because she knows when to be passive and when to be aggressive. So you think about Yin, or the divine feminine, which is the passive, or the being, the visionary. She's the creatrix. She creates an idea or a blueprint of the direction that you want to go to. And this is why it's so important to spend time in meditation and reflection and rest, because it's at those times, and only energetically and physically do you rest, but then you start tapping into that inner intuition and creative spark inside of you that creates new vision about what you want to create for your life. And then the yang takes that vision and makes it come into form. It brings it into form. It
brings it to life.
Brings it to life. It's the action to the vision. So it's like if you are all action and you're dominant yang and you're just like, go, go, go. After a while, you exhaust yourself. Like what you were saying, you exhaust yourself. And then you don't even know why you're doing what you're doing. You don't know the why behind anything that you're doing. You're like, what is my purpose? What is the why? You know,
why? Or it's like you can be driving and all of a sudden you're like, how did I even get here? Or you look back like 5 years is gone and you're like, what did I do with my life?
Yeah, what did I do with my life?
Where am I? And I think that that's also a call from the ancestors. I think that's a call, is like, I don't know, just time and time again, I find our ancestors are relaying maybe something that they wish that they could have been aware of to move forward, to fully experience or to fully dive into what life has to offer, instead of being so caught in the dream, so caught in the, I have to do this and this and this and this, that it's like easy to even forget to look at the rainbows around, right? And I think that's also why people, like you said, people feel a lot more unsatisfied with the religious structure that they grew up in. And like you said, of course, it's amazing to have structure, like that is definitely needed.
We need it. Yeah.
And I also think that that's also a call from the ancestors, or going back into that witch wound, is because of that. Like I have heard so many people who are like, man, I just feel like I'm being drawn to learn more about like where I came from, the roots of my ancestors, what they believed in, how they viewed life, what they thought about. Even I myself, after we recorded this podcast and then it didn't actually record, so we're refilming it. But even in this time of doing this, I've been like super drawn to understanding Norse pagan Christmas traditions, like what they did for that holiday season. And I am from Norway. That's my ancestors. I have it on both sides of the family. And I just always am drawn back to like understanding more about that Norse mythology before anything else came into the picture, and how they were rooted in Mother Earth. And it's just been interesting. It's like I'm going to take away my Christian celebrations. It's just like I'm like, oh, I want to put in this Yule. I want to put in this other element into my life because I know it's going to connect me with my ancestors.
It is.
But that's also clearing the witch wound, because if you remember, you can reconnect. So when we can go into that space of remembering or understanding what they did, it gives us better permission to reconnect, because we're literally saying, hey, I want to know about you. Please, I'm calling you, I'm beckoning you into my space. And that's so powerful. Like, wow.
Oh, yes.
So powerful.
Well, and you think about the times. I mean, it's natural for you to want to connect in with your ancestors, because first of all, the pagan traditions were the culture and the way of life for the indigenous people of those areas, just like the Native Americans here in shamanism. You know, the organized religion came in with the abuse of power. The Lord never did that. That was government, that was power trying to control, manipulate. That wasn't the core teachings of love and service and compassion. It's totally contrary to all the teachings on every level. But anyway, you come in and they overtook the cultures and they infused them with these beliefs and took away their traditions, the way they they celebrate and connect with each other. And the same thing happened in Europe, because what paganism was like, the Native American cultures, they were earth-based faiths or spiritual practices.
Yeah.
And, these organized religions came in and overtook those and took those traditions and beliefs away from the people. This happened all over Europe before it happened to the Americas. So this is something that overtook our whole planet.
Mm-hmm.
And, at the time of history, everything was based off of survival. It was about, surviving and health and depending on Mother Nature and Mother Earth to provide us those things that we needed. And we had great reverence and respect, but it wasn't just Mother Earth, it was the Great Spirit. And in the Great Spirit, they believed there was a mother and a father. And so I think a lot of people have misunderstandings about what these traditions were really talking about, and they get caught up in the hype, or they get caught up in all the stories and ideas that have been created with this witch wound, instead of really going in and really studying them to the core of their teachings, because a lot of the pagan traditions were transferred over into the Christian faiths, like, the holidays of Christmas and Easter, and they adopted a lot of those pagan traditions because at the time, King Constantine was trying to unify the warring pagan tribes that were in his nation. He created the Nicene Council, which created the Bible. But it was meant to unify a country. It really wasn't about the practices so much. It was just like, I don't want so many warring tribes all around me. I want to take control of my country. So I'm going to create one faith where everybody has to do it and nobody will argue anymore. Kind of in a nutshell.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
And so he took some of those pagan traditions and placed it into the Christian faith.
Well, yeah, even the Christmas tree, the pine tree, right? It's the pine tree, evergreen pine tree. Is that the same thing?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. Anyways, as I was like learning about this, it was so interesting because the symbolism of using the pine tree is because the pine tree withstands everything. It's there in the hot times of the year as well as the cold times, especially in like the Norwegian area where it's like so cold all the time. Like it's a lot colder than it is most places in different areas. And even like having that as a symbol is like, it helps us to get through the darkest times, the coldest times, as well as the times of light. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I never knew that. Like, it was just so cool to be reconnected to my ancestors, because I feel like that's been so healing and so helpful. And I feel like we're all being called into that space and knowing that like none of it's bad or wrong. We've talked a lot about discernment and a lot about what your soul's experience came here to learn. And as we are connected into our heart center, like we're going to be guided to even just learn about something, just to learn about it. That doesn't mean you have to become a pagan. Like for me, it's like I'm just learning about all these different tools or studying different scripture, but I feel like it's helping collectively heal myself, heal my wounds that have come. Absolutely. But also ancestrals, as well as like that witch wound is so connected to that as well. It's pretty powerful.
Oh, it's so powerful. Some of the things I was thinking about as you were even talking about that, I thought, even the forms of divination that were created, and then that like tarot or runes or all of those different things that were created with some of these pagan traditions, they were still used as tools to connect with the divine that's inside of them. They weren't giving those power. It was just a tool to use to access that power inside of them. So even that, I kind of wonder if that was perceived as evil along the way, because they're trying to replace a person from organized religions with that divination tool. Say, you don't need that, you need this, and you need to come to me in order to
like a preacher or someone like
to
over
connect
a
with
congregation.
The divine. Yes, or a leader of organization. So it's like, I think where that discernment piece comes in is like, when someone is trying to take away your personal connection to your inner wisdom, that is such a huge sign, like stop sign, just stop right there, because no one should ever want to take that away from you. A
Yeah.
person of truth, a person of spirituality would say you have access to personal revelation within yourself. You don't need to go outside. You have access to that inside of you.
Yeah.
And so that discernment, it's like, we're not saying that all is wrong and all of that. It's just saying there's a mixed bag in every place that you go.
Yeah.
Okay. There's spirits, there's a mixed bag of people, spirits in form in a body.
Yeah.
As a human, in different organizations and faiths and paths. But when you come across these individuals where they try to take away your free will, or they say you need me in order to connect, that is where the line needs to be drawn. Absolutely.
Yeah, because I feel like as a light worker, someone who is helping others remember who they are, waking up from this dream, it's so important to help give them tools or give them ideas or give them things to take on themselves. You don't have to walk them every step of the way. It's like, hey, here's some options. Take it or leave it, but here's some doors. Here's some food. Take it if you want and see if it fits for you or if it's going to fill you. And then continue learning in that journey. I think that's so beautiful of a reminder as well, is that it is all about finding that self-fulfillment and that self-understanding without having to rely on someone else. And I think that's something that we do need to talk about is tarot, because I know personally myself, I always thought it was of the devil. Like, let's be honest here. I did. I thought it was not.
There's a lot of people that feel that way.
Yeah, it was not a good thing. And even when we started working together, you're like, would you be willing to explore like esoteric teachings? And I'm like, I mean, I guess I could, but it's something that I'm very resistant to. And I think that when it comes into spiritual gifts, there's so many ways of being able to connect into the divine, even divine within yourself. And so I feel like, I don't know, I feel like we need to kind of debunk that tarot.
Yes, well,
wound.
They're connected to ancient teachings. Mystery teachings is what they used to call them, that were connected to the Hermetic teachings, which a lot of people recognize the statement "as above, so below." That comes from the Hermetic teachings. But these philosophies that came about thousands of years ago were kind of put into form through the tarot. And the tarot is so much more than what people think it is, because they think, oh, I'm going to go and know about my future or hear about my future, this and that. But actually, there's many layers to the tarot. It is a teaching tool, as well as a spiritual and healing tool. And like, for example, in the tarot, they have the cards that are called the major arcana with the Roman numerals. Well, those major arcana cards represent the different lessons and experiences that we go through in this human experience that we all have in common. And it creates a wheel, and they called it the wheel of life. And one of the paths, or the goal as a human, is to overcome the wheel, or to rise above the wheel, so you're not reincarnated into another human experience. You've passed through and mastered all of these different lessons that we learn as humans. And those are connected to soul contracts that we create before we come into a human form. This is in spirit, where we meet with our guides and we say, this is what I want to experience the next time I come into human form, and I want to work with these people, and you work with these spirits, and they say, yes, I'm going to come into your life, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this I'm going to learn this from you, and we're going to master these lessons that you learn here on the human journey together.
Right. Yes.
And that's what's so beautiful about tarot, because it really expands the way you think about your life. It expands the ideas of who you think you are. It helps you understand your connection to Mother Earth and to the Great Spirit, or Heavenly Father, Mother, or whatever you want to call it. So it is so much more than what people realize. It really helps you dive into yourself, into the subconscious and everything else in between, and just really explore yourself.
Yeah.
About what's keeping you from moving forward in your life, or what's keeping you from really understanding the lessons that you're trying to learn? Why do things keep coming back again and again and again? Like tarot really has brought so much understanding for me and others, where it's like, okay, this is why it keeps coming around, is because there's this core wisdom teaching, and that's inside of these lessons that just haven't quite grasped.
Well, yeah. And when you do a card spread for someone, when you do a reading, it's like, it shows that there is this specific line that it's like weaved throughout every aspect of that person's life at that moment.
Yes.
And sometimes you can't always see it. It's like a blind spot. And so I think it's such a beautiful way of seeing where those blind spots are, and not relying on someone to tell you what you need to be doing or what's the next step for you or how your future is going to be. But really, it's like looking like, hey, what did I learn? Like, what's my soul contract right now? And of course, you take it as a grain of salt, right? You take what's really called to you, how it's filling, how you're really understanding it. So you're not giving away your power to someone else. They're helping you remember so that you can move forward powerfully if you choose to. It's not like you have to do everything they're saying. It's just like, hey, take a look at this.
Yeah.
Take a look and see.
It's the power of perspective, right?
Yeah,
sometimes just shifting your perception can change your life.
Yep.
And that's what I noticed, like readings and also talking to the ancestors, the channelings that you've experienced, is like giving yourself an opportunity to see the bird's eye view of a situation.
Yeah.
It takes you out of the maze. It's like takes you out of this maze for a moment where you're like, oh, okay. The reason I keep going around this is because I'm like stuck on this story or this idea. And maybe if I just shift my perspective and bring love and healing to it, I can get out of the maze. I can get out of the maze of my life and move forward in a more empowered, healthy way.
I love that. And it's just pulling out the perspective. It's like pulling us out of that space to have that bird's eye view, that eagle's eye view of that this is just a small fragment of who we truly are, but we're here right now. So why not experience all of it? The good and the bad, the happy and the sad, because that's part of this human duality. But it also is such a great learning opportunity. And I also feel that when it comes to like Holy Scripture, right, is I'm not comparing Scripture to tarot. What I'm saying is that people who maybe are more identified with the Christian faith or with reading the Bible or whatever form of Scripture they have, is a lot of times people will say, I said a prayer, I opened up my scriptures, and that was the exact verse that I needed to hear. Well, that's very similar in that way, because we are so physical that a lot of times we need to have some kind of physical tool to help us remember a spiritual remembrance. And that goes with people who use sage to clear out energy. Ultimately, they're clearing out energy, but they're setting the intention to release the energy as well, right? So someone who doesn't believe in that, it might not have as great of as an effect because they don't have the intention behind it. And I see that goes with so many different ways of divination, right? It goes, some people like to do the pendulum. Some people really like to do card spreads. Some people would rather prefer to like listen to music or do meditation or do yoga or go to church. Like there's so many ways of a physical structure that helps us remember that we're more than this physical journey.
Yeah, they're just tools.
Tools. And I think that especially jumping into gifts of the spirit is it can be so easy to identify that has to be one way, like the tarot, when you're like, well, would you be open to this? Right. And it took me a while to even be okay with that, or to be more open to that after we did like a lot of different healings from my past, different experiences. But it's like even having an open mind of saying, I'm going to be guided to what I need to know, and trusting your spirit, trusting your heart, and trusting that if it's not enough, if it's not like feeling good for you, then that's fine too. But we're being called to open our perspective. We're being called to see things in a greater way. to connect to the roots of who we are. It's no wonder why people who are very connected to spiritual gifts have to spend a lot of time grounding. That is
Yes.
such a
It's so
parable.
pivotal.
Yeah. And it's such a, like, it's pulling that back even further, is like, in order for us to fully be grounded in our spiritual gifts, it's like rooted in who we truly are.
Yeah,
And when we're
you're still
rooted,
supposed to be here, not escape.
yes,
Yeah.
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 And we're rooted in our ancestors, we're rooted in Mother Earth. Like, we are here, but when we can be here and be connected, like, that's where the true power lies. And it's just
Oh,
like this
absolutely.
magical bundle of joy.
It is. I mean, we're not being cursed to be human. We haven't been outcasted. And I think this is one of the beautiful lessons that the divine feminine teachings or paganism teaches, is that it's to listen to your intuition, listen to your body, recognize that let's say we're speaking to women at this particular moment, but as a woman, you are a vessel for life giving force in your womb. That womb connects you with the womb of creation, with your divine mother. And this is why in ancient tribes, the women were considered the oracles, or the healers and teachers of the tribes. And women were very respected for the wisdom that they brought to their communities and to their families and to their tribes. When a woman was on her moon time or her cycle, her monthly cycle, you were considered at a time of power. And it was very respected. It wasn't considered dirty or ugly or anything else. It was like, she's in her power time. And that was a time of meditation and rest and reflection. So that way she could come forth with wisdom and guidance for her community. And to give birth was considered a miracle. To bleed without dying was considered a miracle. Being able to feed from your body, and your babies, your children, was considered a power.
Yeah.
And so women were very revered and were very respected. And that's what I feel that was lost, not only the suppression of women, but also the total disregard and disrespect of the wisdom and the power that women hold inside of themselves. Now, the men were doing this too. It was being materialized on the outside because of what was happening on the inside. And also women too. I think there was a suppression of our own power within ourselves that somehow brought forth these manifestations into the world of Maya. But, what's happening is, like, we're not here to disregard the masculine. We need the support of the masculine in our lives, and not just physically, but internally, in order to bring forth balance and peace to our planet. But we really are needing to come back, though, to the remembrance of that respect and reverence of the divine mother energy, and what women carry and what we can do, and how we can serve our world on such a grand level. And so I don't know how I got on this rant, but I mean, I was like, I've got to share this feeling with you.
Yeah.
And also too, another thing that came to mind when you were speaking was the intention.
Yes.
Because, spirit, how is spirit going to talk to you? Okay, you're praying. People was like, okay, I need to pray and ask for support. Maybe they've gone up to that level, because a lot of people forget that they even need to ask spirit, because this is a free will universe.
Yes.
And it's important to ask your creator, ask the Holy Spirit, ask your angels, your ancestors, whatever, to support you on your decisions or your struggles or whatever you need. So first ask, remember to ask. But the other thing is, then we ask, and then spirit needs to be able to tell us. So it uses all kinds of different ways to get information to us. Mother Earth uses different ways, and spirit uses different ways, either through scripture, like you saying, setting intention and then opening it up, and it's what you need to hear that day. Or some people use tarot, because a lot of people who've come to me for readings, they would have been asking this question and asking for support from spirit. And then what do you know, it comes full circle during a reading, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm willing to be a vessel of that.
Yeah. Or it's things that they've already thought about time and time again.
Yes.
I find that in sessions specifically is it's like the ancestors are giving them answers already because they're
Yes.
connected into that infinite source, but they just
Or
need
through
someone
mediumship.
physically to confirm it. Like time
Yeah.
and time again, they're like, oh my gosh, I've literally been thinking all of this. I just haven't done anything yet. And it's like, it's time
It's
to
that
do it.
confirmation,
Yeah.
validation. Yeah. And also too, it's like whatever way spirit comes through. I mean, yes, it can be through the soft, still voice. It can, for a peaceful voice inside of you, like the Holy Spirit or an angel, an ancestor talking to you, or sometimes it comes through an outside person or tool or something to help you to create a bridge so they can get the message to you. But spirit is talking to us all the time. It wants to help. Our angels want to help us. Our ancestors want to help us. Our Heavenly Father, Mother, Great Spirit, they all want to help and support us. They love us dearly. But if we're
Yes.
not open to listening and receiving those answers, and we're blocked off in all of these different ways because we're so afraid, we're shutting ourselves down. It's, that is a really lonely way to live. It's like there's a better way to open up, but just with the discernment piece, it's just whether this be someone in church or whether this be someone in town or this person that you're going to for a healing, like where is this person's energy rooted? Is it rooted in love or is it rooted in fear? And fear manifests in manipulation, anger, all these different ways, or they try to take your power from you, like we were mentioning earlier. But if they're rooted in love and they're there to serve you in order to be a channel for you, to deliver a message they just felt prompted by spirit to tell you, or through a reading or through an energy session or a session with a medium like you, or it's like, open your heart. I mean, spirit is trying to talk to you. It's trying to support you so you can live a happier, more whole life.
Absolutely.
In this remembrance that life goes on, that you are multidimensional.
Yeah.
And so this is to follow this prompting inside of yourself to expand on your gifts of spirit, it only brings you empowerment and joy because, that's the other thing. You don't have to go to someone else.
No.
It's like teaching somebody how to fish. Those people who have the strong gifts can teach others how to do it, and then they can feel more confident about the channel inside of themselves.
Well, and that's the thing that's so important. Yeah, is because it can be so easy for someone who's interested in learning about energy healing to go to a specific modality and then only follow letter of the law of the structure of it, which goes against what the purpose is. It's important to understand, but also we have our choice, we have our agency, and our spirit is far more advanced, far more infinite than what we are. So when we can say, hey, I'm really interested in maybe learning this, but ultimately wisdom, intuition trumps wisdom. And it's trusting that wisdom, it's trusting in that space, as well as someone who is stepping into their gifts. It can feel a little bit overwhelming or a little bombarding in the sense that maybe all of a sudden we are open to connecting to spirit. And all of a sudden it's like, how do I, like, it almost feels like too much. And I see people open up that gate and then close it right back down, open it and then close it because it can feel like so much. What would you say in that regard? I'm trying to think of what wisdom I would say, because there's so much there, but people getting started do experience that,
Yes. Well, what's a couple of things. Yeah. I always share that quote with my students is intuition trumps knowledge.
Yes.
Because it's like, even if a teacher, a spiritual teacher is showing you steps, let's say for Reiki, and you're learning energy healing and there is a specific way that you teach. And I, as a Reiki teacher and master, I try to respect, because it's a Japanese lineage. It's Dr. Usui. And I respect him for bringing this information to the United States. And there's a structure and system to it. But once you get in there, you can follow these basic guidelines. But once you're in as a healer, you never know what you're going to see or what you're going to get. Yeah. And you have to trust that intuition about what to do. And when spirit is is giving you instruction of how to work with this energy, it's important that you follow that and say, oh, I can't do that because my next step is put hand placement over the solar plexus.
Yeah.
It's like, no, that's not the way energy works. It's there. The tools are given to you to help you get comfortable and to help you get going. But it's like a launching pad. But once you go off the launching pad, intuition trumps knowledge. Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that understanding the clairs or understanding, so we have our senses here, right? We touch, we taste, we see, we smell. I mean, not everyone has all of the senses, but we come here to experience senses.
Yes.
And just as we can experience those senses in physical form, we can experience those senses in spirit form.
Absolutely. The extrasensory.
Yes. Yeah. And so understanding, like, even when I went to your class, when we were doing when we were doing Reiki, we had a woman with us who, you guys were working on me, you're practicing. And she, at the end, she was saying, well, I kept seeing this, but it was like hard to like fully trust what she was seeing. And in her mind, it was like she was seeing in her mind. And finally she said one thing and I was like, oh my gosh, that resonates with me so much. And then all of a sudden she like had a flood of things to talk about that she kept seeing throughout the time, but she just didn't trust or wasn't as in tune or as comfortable with sharing what she was seeing. But obviously her being able to see things in her mind's eye might be something so empowering and so huge. It's just opening up the space to trust that, because she said something and I was like, wow, yep, that's pretty dang spot on.
That's right on
and
money,
it was like a knee, like a sword in my knee on the right side. And I was like, yeah, that's pretty spot on with what I've been experiencing in the past. Is like, I just feel like every time I get going, my knee, like someone's there to like cut my knees off. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it was just so interesting that she was experiencing that. And having that been said, like understanding those, or understanding maybe what's your strongest suit, what makes the most sense, easiest, is important to lean into that, to trust that. Because for me, when I got started, I would do a lot of automatic writing, or I would draw out a lot of pictures. When you met with me first, I was like drawing out a lot of pictures, explaining things. And now I'll do a certain thing to like set up for drawing wise. And now that I've been able to focus in on that, it's like, okay, now I can see things a lot more in my mind instead of have it physically on a paper. Yes. So it kind of transfers into different ways.
Different channels. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's not bad or wrong to look into those or to discover them.
Oh, gosh,
because just like in the scriptures, there's the gift of faith, the gift to be healed, the gift of ministering angels and spirits, the gift of knowledge, the gift of wisdom. There's so many gifts, and understanding that we have senses and we have spirit senses is like a game changer.
It is. And gosh, there's so many things that you said that, it's interesting in the beginning. It's like when you're first coming into your gifts, and this kind of goes back to one of your earlier questions, they'll open up and close down. And the reason being, I think, is because in our societies, we've been so prone to action. And that is very yang energy. Like you have to do it. You got to make it happen. You got to push hard, like all this motivational energy, yang, 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 yang energy. When you're working with gifts of spirit, it's passive. You can't make yourself be clairvoyant.
Yeah.
You can't like push yourself to see things. It's almost like a falling back, almost like it's almost like you're kind of relaxing, like you're saying, trust, and falling back into saying, I surrender and I'm willing to receive whatever is coming to me. It's a very yin energy that you are working with when you work with spirit, because if, like, just for example, like when we start doing journey work, from guided meditations and journey work, you can't make yourself journey.
Yeah.
You relax into it, and all of a sudden your experience just starts to blossom inside. You're like, all of a sudden I'm seeing this, and this is happening, and this is happening.
Yeah.
You can't make yourself see that, and you can't make yourself journey. You can't make yourself be clairvoyant and see spirit, or make yourself hear spirit, clairaudience. But it's more about just relaxing into it and allowing it to come to you, because as a reminder, this is natural. This is not something that you have to go get. You already have it. Now, there's going to be certain channels that are stronger than other channels. Just like in the beginning, you did a lot of automatic writing, which is usually connected to claircognizance. But now, as you've been exploring this even on a deeper level, it's transferred over to your clairvoyance. And now your clairvoyance has been getting stronger. And then you start noticing, oh, I'm hearing things more and more.
Yeah.
And then your audience gets stronger.
I'm in the space of hearing things a lot more now.
Yeah.
And I've been delivering messages for like 7 years.
Yeah,
and
it changes.
It changes, absolutely. And you can't, and I feel like it's easy. At first, I would look at how other mediums did stuff, like, oh, they experience it this way, or they do it that way. And there's not one size fits all when it comes to spiritual gifts. And comparing what you have or what you're experiencing to someone else is like it almost feels like demeaning, because your spirit is here to learn and to grow, and you're not going to be the same way as anybody else. And that's a good thing. It's a beautiful thing. Like, even for sessions, like, I never smell things. Like, I just don't have a good sense of smell in general. And the only time I've ever had anything come forward with smell was when I was connecting to a mom who lost her son. And he was talking about his dad. And then all of a sudden I smell Arby fries. And that was like the one thing that they would go do together, was go get Arby's fries. And I've never experienced anything since then with smell. But then I talked to other people, and like, oh, I smell things all of the time. And instead of being
that's a
like,
pretty dominant one for me as well.
And I like, that's like never. But
that's
knowing
the thing is, you can have all the senses you have in a physical body are in spirit form too. So, and a lot of times when we're working with people, you know, they don't realize that, like, even with the journeys, like over time, like, you'll have dominant ones, but if you keep practicing, all of those channels are going to open up. So when you're on a journey, you'll see it, feel it, taste it, you know, smell it. You'll have this more full experience, because those channels you've been working out just like a muscle, and they start to strengthen. But like what you were saying is, people are sometimes shocked, even with the ones that they know that are very dominant, and people who are really connected to gifts of spirit, like you are as a medium. And they're like, gosh, I did it this way. And all of a sudden it changed. And I remember it just switched all of a sudden. I remember a Long Island medium talking about that, because she said that in the beginning, Teresa Caputo, which I love. We're huge fans. But in the beginning, she was predominantly clairsentient. And so she would feel spirit. And so she would communicate what she was feeling. And then sometimes she would get a download either through her audio, clairaudience, or they get a name or whatever. She said over the years, it's been her dominant one that she's been working with more so now is claircognizant. She's like, I just get the download and I just deliver the information. It's just moving like that.
Interesting. Yeah.
So she's like, I'm just surprised, because I thought that I was clairsentient and I thought this, but now it's moving over here. And it's because we have access to all of them. It's just that over time, the channel will change. Like sometimes we'll be working more with this and less with this, but then all of a sudden it'll transfer over to this.
Yeah. And I think it also helps us become non-complacent, is because if you're always growing, your spirit's always evolving. So if you get comfortable in a specific place, then you get too comfortable.
And if you notice, like a lot of people too, they'll say, oh, I don't have gifts of spirit because I don't see spirit. Yeah. Like they automatically assume that if they're not clairvoyant,
like they have to or people think like you have to physically see spirit to have gifts, which I've never.
It's not true.
Yeah. I've never like physically seen spirit. It's like you see it in your mind.
In your mind.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think also being willing to experience gifts is also important. Being willing to say, hey, like I've been meditating a lot and I just keep feeling like this call to focus on hearing things. And so throughout the day, I'll have these thoughts come to my mind, which normally I would just like tune out, but I'm like, no, I need to listen to that. And as I'm listening to that, as I'm making it kind of a game, like, oh, I don't want to call this person. I don't have the energy. I don't have the time, but it's like, no, you need to call them. It's like, okay, I will. And it's like, the more we practice trusting our intuition, the more profound it's going to get. But it's just starting somewhere and just moving forward, because it's all about growth.
Yeah. And really it starts with trusting yourself. And I think the healing process starts there.
Yeah.
And like I said, going back to the witch wound, there's been this mistrust that has been established for your own truth, for yourself, trusting yourself. And then also I noticed, like, even women with women and relationships, and there is this fear of, and I think it's because we were all so collectively wounded and we were in survival mode. It was more competitive, and women bashed each other and were more competitive towards each other. It's like, as we heal this inside of ourselves and we learn how to trust our own selves, and to come back in a remembrance of who we really are and reconnect, come back to yourself, and you build that relationship with yourself, then you start trusting and creating more intimate, soulful relationships, and women begin to trust each other more and support each other and help each other rise up. And this is going to be happening within the male tribes as well, men and women coming together, but men gathering and women gathering. That competitive energy is rooted in fear. It's rooted in there's not enough. There's not enough to go around. The poverty consciousness, the lack consciousness, but also tapped into survival. And so when you're coming into your gifts of spirit, the first step is to do your own personal healing. Really heal your own wounds and understand that it is safe for you to trust yourself. It's safe for you to be powerful. It's safe for you to receive and to give love without limitations. There's nothing outside of you that can ever take anything truly away from you. That's not possible. You are much bigger than that. So
I love that you bring it back to that, because ultimately you can study all different kinds of gifts of spirit. You can study the clairs, you can go to different courses, but ultimately it does stem from you.
You gotta trust yourself. Yeah.
It goes back to that every single time is, do I trust myself? Do I trust what's coming forward? And I love that you collect that back into the witch wound, because that is so there. It's like, am I safe? Am I safe to explore this? We're not in a time where we're going to be burned for exploring anything.
Or like the trust, the wound is so deep that even when you do receive a gift and a message from spirit and guidance, you question it. Am I being tempted by something bad or evil? Is it okay? Am I crazy? All these different things go through your mind. It's like, okay, where is the energy of the message rooted? Is it helpful? Is it healing? Is it loving? Then that's from spirit, my love. Trust that guidance. Because that wound is connected to that. It's like, gosh, even when you do get help, even when spirit comes to the rescue and it gives you an answer or direction, then you question and block yourself off. You're just like, oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah. And it's giving yourself grace too. Yeah. Well, because even when I finished up my training with you, when we did some of our journey works at the end, I remember still being so worried. Like, am I going to lead people astray? Like, is what I'm doing rooted in love? Like, am I wrong? And we went and we explored that and discovered that. And I think that's what so many people experience is like, am I being misled? Right. And I just think it's so beautiful to go back to that foundation of yourself and doing your own work to see, hey, why am I so fearful of this? What am I afraid of?
Well, and you think about that balance of masculine and feminine, right?
Yeah.
Discernment, trust. So you can have both. You can trust yourself and you can have discernment.
Yeah.
So you don't have to say, oh, I'm just going to trust and whatever comes, whatever. No, you can trust into the energy and trust yourself and say, where is this rooted?
Yes.
And and still practice that discernment piece,
Yep.
and bring that balance within yourself, of that masculine feminine energy within yourself. Because if it's rooted in truth, oh my gosh, if it's rooted in truth, love, and light, sometimes it's not rainbows and unicorns. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not always just fluffy.
Yeah.
A lot of times it's very powerful, but whatever comes through, it's like what you need. It's what you need in order to move forward with your life, or to heal, or to be more empowered, or to see things from a different perspective, which releases you from of how you've been bound up to that point of your life. It's freeing, it's liberating. If the messages that you're feeling are intuition, you're trusting it, but you're getting this like, yeah, but I just, don't know about this person, and this is bad, and this is bad, and this is bad, and I think I'm gonna, get rid of this and divide myself and push this down. Or if it's fear ridden, if it's centered in fear, it'll be very divisive. And it'll make you feel worse, instead of better or at peace. It'll bring in more discomfort and chaos in. If it has rooted in that energy, it's like, if it's chaotic, or it brings disharmony, or if it brings separation, division, suppressive kind of energies, my love, that is not spirit.
Yeah, totally.
Not the right kind anyway.
Yeah, that's not what you want to be incorporated with.
Yeah, and you have a choice.
So good. You have a choice. And that's it. That's absolutely right. Is you have a choice whether or not you want to step into it. You have a choice whether or not you want to deliver, what kind of light you want to connect into on the other side. Like, it's all choice. It all comes back to that. And I think even giving yourself grace for getting started. Because when you do get started in gifts of spirit, it's a learning curve. You're learning to trust yourself. Yes. So there are times where maybe delivering a message wasn't right on, or maybe it's like they're not aligning with it. Even with tarot, right? It's like maybe what you're reading and they're like, I don't know. Maybe they don't want to hear it. Maybe they're not aligned with it. Maybe there's something on your side. But it's like, it's so important to give yourself grace and compassion in learning and looking back at where you got started. And instead of making that person wrong, who you were getting started, it's like, wow, that person was so courageous. I was so courageous that time, even if I might not do it like that now. It's giving yourself grace.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Stepping in is powerful. It's scary. It's intimidating. It's an unknown chapter that society doesn't give you a handbook to. There's no handbook for stepping into gifts.
And you don't have anybody saying, hey, you're so brave or courageous. Well, let us just tell you.
You
are courageous.
So brave.
And this is also too what kind of frustrates me about women supporting women. And I've seen this on the males as well, but other healers attacking other healers, or condescending the way that they provide their gifts. And, it takes so much courage to put yourself out there, to share your gifts with the world. As women, we should be supporting each other, even if we wouldn't do that exactly the same way, or we wouldn't be teaching a class this way, or we wouldn't be doing that this way. Sisters, we don't need more division. Right. We need to hold each other up. We need to support each other on speaking our truth. It's hard enough to put yourself out. It's like diving off of a high dive into the clouds. Like I was telling you before, it's a complete act of trust and faith in your path, knowing that people may judge you, knowing that you're just hoping that you're a clear enough channel to provide this and that. It's not easy. It is not easy sometimes when you're dealing with all of those shadows and having to be so courageous to put yourself out there and use your gifts of spirit. So it's frustrating to me. And I feel like that's connected also to the witch wound, because again, it's about like, if I make someone else look bad, it makes me look better. Therefore, I'm more safe. And it's a subconscious root into this energy. And so, but what's being called for right now is like everybody, just like you said earlier, everybody has gifts to share. And there's certain areas they're going to have strengths, and certain areas they're going to have weaknesses. But And it's good to be aware of the weaknesses, but we should always focus on our strengths and making that is the best that we can.
Yeah.
And we should support our sisters and our brothers who are putting themselves out there, using those gifts of intuition or gifts of spirit to help others, to say, you know what?
Yeah.
You've got this. Keep going. The world needs more of this energy. I'll do it this way, you do it that way, and that's fine. It's perfect just the way it is. So the bashing, and I know this is human nature, like we were talking about before.
Yeah.
Humans have used every excuse known to man and woman to hurt others. And it's just time to stop. It's just time to stop, you know?
That's so true. And the last thing I want to add in with that is so powerful. Thinking about that, also connecting that into the space of going back into the witch wound of where it came from, how it was very rooted in fear. Like, they can't do this, they can't do this, you know? It's almost like we've also been taught to judge one another or to put ourselves above somebody. I wouldn't do that. Why are they showing up that way? Instead of being like, wow, how authentic and how amazing. Even if it might not be my cup of tea, that doesn't mean it's not someone else's. Yes. And I think that's a reminder for those who are seeking spiritual gifts and who are in the closet still. You're not going to be everyone's cup of tea. There are going to be people who don't understand, who will never understand. But at the end of this lifetime, you are responsible for looking back and saying, wow, I did it. Or I didn't do it because I was afraid of someone else.
Yeah, I lived a life authentically.
Ultimately, it's only us. We are the only person who's accountable. And that is something to reel in and to be powerful human beings in, because ultimately, who cares what anyone else thinks? What do you think? What does your spirit want to accomplish? How can you have faith, have courage, feel the fear, and do it anyways? Because that's what we're all being called to do.
Yes.
And why not live this life, a life to remember, instead of one you want to forget?
Yes, not a life of regret. Come into your fullness.
Yes.
And that's what's so exciting about, again, this time.
So exciting.
This time of history. I mean, we get to be here right now.
Yeah.
To be awake and have a human experience and to explore our multidimensional reality and our gifts of spirit and integrate that into this whole thing. You know, what an opportunity. And I so agree with you, Jen. At the end of the days, your last breath, you're going to look back at your life and say, did I live my life, you know, to the fullest? Did I do what what my heart wanted? Did I say what I needed to say to those that I loved? Did I speak my truth? Did I live authentically? Did I live it to the absolute fullest of my capability? Right?
Yeah.
That's what we need to be cheering people on for. Like, do it.
You do it. That is amazing.
Do it. Explore it.
Yeah, Doug Cartwright, he has an amazing book. It's called Oh Shit, We're Alive.
Oh, yes.
And have you listened to that yet?
I haven't, and you keep telling me it's like the third or fourth time I got to listen to it.
So good. But this keeps popping up. Is he talks about being a hype man, and he talks about spending 30 minutes a day online just hyping people up, cheering them on, giving them the courage and the strength. Like, wow, that is so amazing. Good for you. I'm so proud of you. Because when we're proud of other people, we're creating a space within ourselves to be more authentic. We're helping others have that authenticity. It's natural for us to want to seek validation. We don't have to, but it's natural. And so when we can help other people feel validated, like, wow, that shows what kind of a person you really can be. Instead of tearing him down, it's like, wow, you go, Glen Coco. Like, you do it.
Go all the way. Well, this is the thing too. I think a lot of people, they feel that resistance saying that because they don't do that for themselves first. And you always need to do it for yourself first.
That's true.
And so be your own best friend. If you can't count on anyone else, count on yourself. You know, trust yourself, be your own best friend. Give yourself a cheering session. And because the truth is that you are not lacking anything.
Mm,
Okay, you have
love that.
everything inside of you. You don't lack anything.
You
So
are
to
not
cheer
lacking
someone
anything.
else on, it's almost like you're saying it out loud as a confirmation of the truth that you know inside of yourself for you.
Yeah, that is very true. That is very true. And that's so powerful, you know?
It is.
I
It
got to write
is.
that down because that's so good.
Well, this was such a fun conversation, Jen. I was really looking forward to this conversation because I feel like we need to call it out,
Yeah.
call out the fear. And because it's a roadblock that we all must come up against at some point as we
Yes.
come into our awakening. And so, many blessings to all of you that are listening. Just keep
Yes.
going, trust yourself. It's
You
a
are doing,
beautiful life.
yeah, you are doing an amazing job.
Yeah,
Connect to your heart, feel the fear, do it
do it
anyways.
anyway.
It's so worth it.
Yes, it is.